Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review. And don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast. All right, I am recording for Contrarian Corner for Eurotrip.
Hello and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my Peruvian counterpart, Julio. Julio, 120 episodes deep, numeric episodes, that of course not including the just litany, the deluge of bonus episodes that we've had. I guess we're officially breaking the Mattis rule. We're past 90. We're past 90 minutes, so we're well past it.
Well,
as we go into this,
we did say that the year 7 of the Contrarians was going to break a lot of rules. It was going to reinvent a lot of things. So we even got a new president. It's all new.
That we did. As it's easy to get kind of mopey or down in the dumps with everything else going on in the world right now, the pandemic and just all the shit that our country's facing. How glorious was that Saturday?
I want to say that words fail me, but that's not true. It's just that at the same time, what hasn't been said is more appropriate. And
anyone that follows me on Twitter or yourself knows we definitely did a few victory laps that day.
I felt a sense of joy all throughout my social media timelines, my feeds, that I hadn't felt maybe in 40 years. So that was really the really cool thing. And I know that that's just basically my fraction of the world. And I completely understand that there's a completely different section of the world that was feeling the complete opposite. And they were probably really bummed. And to that, I say, good.
Fuck you.
I'm sorry. It needed to happen. Not to get too political. I just want to focus on the fact that maybe for that one day, maybe in a couple of days, we were on this little part, we were all like really happy and united on the happiness and laughing at just like the ridiculous bullshit, like Rudy Giuliani holding a press conference between an adult bookstore and a crematorium. I don't know. It was just insanity, and we could all just laugh because it's like, it's on its way out.
Yeah, no, it was again, like Julio said, not to get too political, I don't think every single one of our prayers is about to be answered, or, it's not like things are just magically going to get better. But man, for me personally, none of that shit mattered for that one day. It was just very joyous. Me and my sister danced for like a half hour, not even doing a bit. Like, we just turned on music after the news broke and just danced to fucking Rick James. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And you know what? I honestly, if you're a Trump supporter and you've been listening to this show, I don't know what you expected our reaction to be.
I don't know. I think we usually work in a way to talk shit about him all the time. So
maybe this is the moment where we realize that whenever we were praising the MAGA movement, we were doing that facetiously, and when we were talking trash about them, we meant it. This is the episode where
it's the person that's just listened to Contrarian's Corner on the Entourage movie just and never listened to the second half of the episode.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah.
Onward.
Fuck them. We are here today to take a trip back to 2004 for the, I guess I knew this, but it never really registered with me. There is a genre just specifically called sex comedy. Obviously, American Pie, Road Trip, Eurotrip. What were the other big defining movies of that era? I'm trying to remember if there were
what other
sex
trips?
Comedies.
The Guilt Trip.
Oh God. Van Wilder is one, but they're that big pocket of these teenage sex comedies. I'm sure Tara Reid was in something that also was besides American Pie that was very popular at the moment.
Would you say Harold and Kumar qualified? I mean, I don't think they get laid at all, but the type
But
of
that movie
humor.
makes sure to have linger on some gratuitous shots of female. It's Malin Ankerman's breasts in that movie. Of course that's nothing new here on the Contrarians, but yeah, I think that would fall in line. The difference being my dad would say that's a funny movie and that this isn't.
Oh, no. Come on.
That would be the dividing quality between those two. 2004, so I would have been what exact date did this come out? February 20th of 2004, so I would have been a junior in high school. Julio, you were just getting accepted into AARP?
I was not a citizen, but I was a legal resident here in the glorious United States of America. I was not a girl, but not yet a woman. It was right in the middle.
God bless.
Yeah, it was that sweet spot. We were just talking about it right before we started recording, where I would watch anything in theaters because I could watch it for free, and I had enough free time, and it was just great.
Not yet out of my parents' home, still in high school when this movie came out. I saw this, and I want to say San Marcos at the Starplex out there. If we have any local Central Texas listeners, you'll likely know what I'm referring to. I think we got into this with no issue, if I remember correctly, because I would have been 16 still, but I think, my older friend bought the tickets to it, but because there was a previous incident with Old School where we couldn't get in and my mom had to buy us tickets because we were all there at one point in time.
Did she have to go sit with you during the movie?
No, they weren't that malicious. She kind of just bought them and walked over and gave them to us. What was Freddy versus Jason? We bought tickets to, what was that Jessica Biel movie with Jimmy Fox when they're in the army?
Stealth.
Is it Stealth? Okay, we bought tickets to that and then ran into the Freddy versus Jason theater. To be young.
Packed with at least half that auditorium was people with stealth tickets.
It's a very safe bet. To be young at a time of movies like this, it's funny to me that this movie was a bomb at the box office because you and I aren't the only people that talk about this or quote this or have a lark or a laugh from time to time discussing it. I feel like it kind of gained more notoriety on a home video market for people of that era because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it really does feel like there is a set group of people of a particular age set that will immediately get the Scotty doesn't know reference.
I think so. I think that not so much. I mean, yeah, definitely Scotty doesn't know, but also I think that there might be just a divide between the people that would find this funny and people that wouldn't.
Yes,
we'll go more into that in real talk.
We'll get into a deep dive into that.
Yeah, but I think that Scotty doesn't know it's tricky because you're right. Yeah, some people will get the reference, some people won't. But I would say most people will find it funny no matter what. And then it's what happens elsewhere in the movie is where you might see the big gulf between audiences.
So if this is your first time listening to the Contrarians, we thank you for joining us. If you're a returning listener, as always, greatly appreciated. Give us a few moments here while we explain our whole gimmick and reason for being to our new listeners. Here on the Contrarians, we like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine, as we say. Find a movie that is highly rated. We typically shoot for about 98% and above. A movie that's oftentimes noted as certified fresh, and then make a case for maybe why critics should take a few steps back and pump the brakes on what they're saying about it. On the other side of that, we find a movie that is low rated, typically 30% and below, one of those nasty green splotches they like to call rotten, and make a case for the movie's positive merit. If this is your first time listening, you are tuning in for one of our gray area episodes, as we call it, whereas Julio, these are our every 10 episodes, we kind of split the uprights here.
Yeah, one of us will take the attacking position, the other one will be the defense, and we'll hash it out. It's still, in real talk, you'll get to hear how we really feel. In this case, we decided that Alex was going to attack and I was going to defend because, as far as Contrarian's lore goes, I am the biggest proponent of this movie making its way into the show. How do I feel about it now that I've watched it after maybe 10 years? Well, we'll find that out in real talk.
So let's go to Ohio, Hudson, Ohio. And when this was first released, what were the critics saying about this, Julio?
So it's a gray area. I have a nice mix of fresh and rotten quotes, starting with a fresh quote from David Nusser from Real Film Reviews, who says, "One of this new century's very best comedies." I mean, we're a few years into the new century.
I was about to say it was a bit early to call that fight.
Scott Weinberg from eFilmCritic.com puts a green splotch on it and says, "This one's so laughless, so charmless, and so resoundingly amateurish that one wonders why it doesn't carry a National Lampoon Presents in front of the title."
Did get that, a lot of it throughout it.
Scott Weinberg just attacking NLP on the side, shooting from the hip. Another fresh quote from Charlie Lynn from Ultra Culture, who says, "Eurotrip is satire at its most brazenly self-loathing and audaciously entertaining." I mean, I didn't get the self-loathing part, unless you're talking about American self-loathing, which I guess then I truly get. And then finally, for this section, one final rotten quote from Frederick and Marianne Broussat from Spirituality and Practice, who say, "A movie so bad that it dares to give the old and worn out term the ugly American new life and vitality."
What was the source on that?
That was Spirituality and Practice.
Interesting. I wonder if that's like a Christian outlet. Regardless, yeah, I could see their sentiments and understand it. So, like I said, Eurotrip takes place in Hudson, Ohio, because it has to be Ohio, because there are no characters of color in this city that they live in. Our main character, Scotty Thomas, played by Scott Mechlowitz. Do we know him from anything else, Julio?
No, I think he just retired after this one. Like, where else do you go after Eurotrip?
Went out on top. I did get a bit of a chill for the old DreamWorks signature open. The do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That's was a very happy sound of my childhood and teens. When I heard that, I usually knew I was in for a very entertaining 90 minutes, be it from the animated side or comedy, what have you. And then, did you notice who they credited as one of the executive producers on this? A gentleman returning to the Contrarians?
No, I was just looking out for Alec Berg's credit, and I saw it. And I was like, Alec Berg from HBO's Silicon Valley. This is, the beginning of his career. I attended a panel at AFF where he was talking about, all the cool stuff he's done. And then somebody brought up Eurotrip. And he was like, yeah, that was fun. No further comment. Next question.
It was all right. Ivan Reitman was credited as one of the executive producers on this.
So when Ivan Reitman wants to get really raunchy, he just kind of throws his name in the middle of the credits. He doesn't want to be, front and center. But he's still there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. I don't know. I see so few movies these days that I don't know if this is still a thing, but it definitely felt like it was a turn of the millennium gimmick. The opening credits being of like animated or something to do with the movie, where, the credits were being cast through, a passport or an animated sequence of a safety pamphlet in a flight. I did appreciate that. But yeah, besides Ivan Reitman, the only two names worth a shit in this movie, I kept saying, who? And then I saw Lucy Lawless and Michelle Trachtenberg, and that's where the star power begins and ends for this film.
Okay, well, I mean, that's only because Matt Damon is uncredited.
Still, we'll get to that. Just the absolute perplexing nature of what happens there. So it's high school graduation in 2004, a year away from my high school graduation. And again, our main character, Scotty, is dumped by his girlfriend, Fiona, immediately following the high school graduation. And I guess it's supposed to be funny because as he's being dumped, his family walks up and is videotaping him and taking pictures of him, led by none other than Jeffrey Tambor, who I had completely forgotten was in this movie.
Alan's father. Yeah, what are you talking about? No star power. He's there for maybe 3 scenes, and every time he shows up, it's just he can do so much with so little.
He should have been the fucking opening credit, starring Jeffrey Tambor.
Starring Transparent's Jeffrey Tambor. Arrested Development's Jeffrey Tambor. Hangover 3 is Jeffrey Tambor.
So, yeah, I guess we're supposed to feel that this Scotty character is a real sad sack and have some semblance of fucking sympathy for him. His girlfriend Fiona dumps him pretty ruthlessly, so it's I guess you could get some sympathy for him. Until then, you see that his best friend is a guy named Cooper, played by Jacob Pitts, who I honestly only have any real knowledge of because he was in an episode of Sex and the City.
Jacob Pitts is from Justified, my friend. And of course, this is obviously way before his Justified years, but he plays one of the marshals in Justified along Timothy Oliphant. And he's great. He's a sniper. He's one of the fan favorites on the show. Watching Justified, I would get a kick out of seeing him play this really serious character and just going, but it's Cooper from Eurotrip. He wants to get laid all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we were already nearly 30 years removed from, Animal House and movies of that ilk. You would have thought we would have come up with a better trope than just the hyper horny best friend who is only driven by sex. And more importantly, we're 3 years removed from fucking Road Trip, and I think American Pie was 99, so about 5 years away from American Pie. But we have the Stifler character already. We have Sean William Scott. We understand by 2004 that he exists in the ether. Why do we need someone who's not Sean William Scott playing the Stifler character?
See, that's exactly why we need somebody other than Sean William Scott, because from my memory, like his character in Road Trip, Sean William Scott's character in Road Trip is just Stifler again. Now it's like, give me some variety. I've already seen Sean William Scott play this type. I need somebody else. Bring Jacob Pitts. Bring whoever else. I think that it's good. You need different actors showing you different shades of the character. I will not deny Stifler's massive contribution to the world of comedy and just how basically he just gave new life to the stereotypical horny friend. But the thing is that that's a trope, a character that survives decades after the fact because they exist in real life. I think in a way, the 4 characters that make up the core group here in Eurotrip are all different facets of our personalities. I think all of us have a little bit of Cooper, we have a little bit of Scotty, a little bit of Jamie, and even a little bit of Jenny. And that's why you see them over and over in these type of comedies. And Jacob Pitts is great. He's so funny. Come on. Are you telling me that going forward for the rest of 2020, you're not going to use the line, this is not where I parked my car?
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, did you really, are you the person that bought the t-shirt that said, this isn't where I parked my car? Is that you?
And then the back it says, this is where I parked my car.
So already we know what kind of movie we're in for. And that night they have the high school graduation party. And this is where we're introduced to, as you mentioned, Jenny and Jamie, twin siblings.
I just realized you never watched the Buffy TV show. So where do you know Michelle Trachtenberg from?
Harriet the Spy, brother.
Oh, we might have talked about this before because that doesn't make any sense.
It makes perfect sense. That was like a thing when I was a little kid. 1996 is when Harriet the Spy came out. I was, by definition, a little kid, and it was also a Nickelodeon movie. And man, you don't understand what it was like when a movie got that Nickelodeon label put on it as a little kid. You only thought Nickelodeon was like a TV channel. So when a movie got that like orange splotch on it, my God. That's like, I think Scorsese being the director is the only modern equivalent I have to that.
So she was Harriet before she was Buffy's sister, right?
Yeah. I mean, she was a teen or adult by the time she did Buffy. Again, she was like a kid in Harriet the Spy.
Yeah. Okay, well, so does that make it, the fact that you haven't seen her as a teenager in Buffy, does that make it weirder or less weird when you see her being super sexual in this movie?
She was also an Inspector Gadget. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what my emotion was at the time. I mean, everything about this movie is tailored for a 16-year-old boy, so I don't remember. I don't remember it being weird. Like,
Well, I mean, because I know that in my case, it makes me appreciate her performance more because her character in Buffy, I mean, she's
it's a
the younger
breakaway.
sister, and Buffy's not at all like this movie. So while I can see it as a very clear attempt at jumping into the R-rated pool, trying to just shed that image of being Buffy's little sister, I still I can appreciate also that she has the chops to make that jump because not everybody can do it.
And then her, on the other side of that twin coin, her brother, played by Travis Wester, who, even just looking at his filmography here, not too familiar with. He was in an episode of Scrubs, apparently. He was also on Justified.
Really, he reunited with Jacob Pitts. Do you think Jacob Pitts got him the gig?
Yes. The DJ quals of this movie, just without any of the charisma or likability, as Travis Wester playing Jamie. And it becomes apparent that this little quad, this quartet of friends, they've been friends for quite some time, because obviously Michelle Trachtenberg is a very attractive young lady, but none of them see her in that light. So much so that Cooper repeatedly says, "I thought you were a girl," or like, "That's gross. You're not a girl." You know, really sophisticated dialogue that you come to expect from the brain trust that made this movie.
We were praising, yeah, it was last episode. We're praising the relationship that Josh Gad had with Emma Stone in The Rocker, because she's just somebody that she's a very attractive woman, but he doesn't see her as a very attractive woman. He sees her like an older sister. And in this case, it's just a more comedic version of that, where Cooper and everybody else, they don't see her as an attractive young girl. They see her as just a buddy. You know that that's real life. They just play it up a little bit more for comedy. That's what comedy is, Alex.
Sir, I would implore you to never compare the duo of Josh Gad and Emma Stone to that of Jacob Pitts and Michelle Trachtenberg again. Blaspheme, I say. And as to be expected, it's in all caps on my notes. Matt Damon. We will get in the second half of this podcast to how Matt Damon's role in this movie came to be. But fucking Matt Damon is in Eurotrip. He shows up as the lead singer of a local punk band that sings the aforementioned iconic, at least for a very small percentage of youths, track Scotty Doesn't Know. It is not Matt Damon singing, sadly, but he does do the intro, and his lip syncing skills are absolutely up to snuff. And he gets to suck face with the actress that plays Fiona.
Dude, I used to know the lyrics to that song. It was on my iPod.
He's so trusting while I'm on top of you thrusting. Yeah,
Yes. It's so clever.
It's a catchy tune. Even at 16, watching this in the theater, I remember being like, is that Matt Damon? And I guess this is a little bit of real talk, but I have garnered such an appreciation for this. And it still is one of the most baffling and perplexing cameos ever. Because it's not like we're not talking about a young Matt Damon here that, is The Rocker, for example. We're not talking about a young nubile Emma Stone. Matt Damon was an A-list superstar at this point. And I honestly think if social media had had a bigger presence in 2004, it would have led to this movie doing much better. Like we've talked about, I think, once or twice here on the podcast. A big part of why Zombieland did really well was because the news got out about the Bill Murray cameo. Mm. And this is even way more baffling than that. But Julio, I mean, what comes to your mind when you strap in for a movie that's a National Lampoon, ripoff, and fucking Matt Damon shows up?
But it fits. That's the thing. What goes through my mind is just, of course, because I think even before Matt Damon became, I guess, known for just showing up in movies, right? Because I know we've made the joke before about Interstellar, like the comparison, right? He shows up in Interstellar.
Interstellar's a little bit different than Eurotrip.
But in concept, it's the same. He's uncredited. He's not in the trailers. And he shows up and you're like, Matt Damon, of course. I don't think you've seen this movie. It's a Steven Soderbergh movie. Oh, I don't even remember the name now, but it was his first movie that he shot like on a phone. And Matt Damon shows up for one scene. He's a guy that shows up to tell the protagonist how she needs to protect herself from stalkers. And he has a couple pages worth of dialogue. comes in and out, leaves, and you're like, was that Matt Damon? What the fuck? But every time afterwards, you just go like, of course. He has that reputation at this point, a guy that would just do, I guess, anything if he deems the project worthwhile, which clearly he did with Eurotrip, just like he did with Interstellar and this Steven Soderbergh movie. Even going all the way back to Chasing Amy. I don't know if you remember, but he has that little part in Chasing Amy, and I know that was young Matt Damon, pre-Oscar Matt Damon, but still, I think this is a guy that just follows his heart. When he finds something interesting, he just goes. He doesn't care about where his name shows up in the credits, if at all. And ultimately, Damon is great, but the song is great, and I think that's... Can you think of a sequence like the Scotty Doesn't Know sequence in a comedy, like off the top of your head?
That I was about to say, if you gave me some time, I'm sure I could come up with something, but it's... I mean, it gives this movie its identity. Anyone that's ever seen this movie will... this is like immediately what comes to the forefront of their mind. Again, we'll save the Matt Damon discussion for real talk, but you're absolutely right. This... I guess some people would say the news anchor battle in the first Anchorman with all those cameos you didn't see coming, but even then, I would argue that this is way more memorable because it's from such an unremarkable movie, and fucking Matt Damon showing up in this to me is slightly more impressive than Ben Stiller showing up in Anchorman.
And also, it's intercut with boobs, always a good thing.
No. A staple of the turn of millennium sex comedies.
I told you I ended up renting the unrated cut because it was 2 whole minutes of extra raunchiness, I guess. And I honestly, I guess it's been so long since I watched the theatrical cut that I couldn't tell you what the difference was. But if I had to guess, I think we just got 2 extra minutes of that girl in the pool grabbing her boobs, which, all right. I'm with Cooper. That's fine.
Have you seen Sex Drive? Have you ever seen that movie?
A long time ago. That's James Marsden, right?
Yeah, pretty much the last attempt at making a movie like this, a sex comedy. That's the whole joke. The unrated version of that movie is just... there's nothing really different about the movie. There's just these like static shots of nudity, both male and female, thrown in for no reason. All right, so Scotty doesn't know, but what Scotty does do is he gets very drunk at this party, and he goes back, and we're very briefly introduced in the beginning of this idea that he has this pen pal in Berlin, Germany, who he believes to be named Mike, and it's just a guy he's got a good friendship with. Cooper puts in his head that it's a dude trying to meet up with him and have sex with him or take advantage of him, what have you. So when Scotty gets back from this party, he's drunk. He sees an email from Mike saying that, I'm so sad to hear about you breaking up with your girlfriend. I'd like to get together and, make things better for you. Just a very, innocently worded email. And being drunk, he messages back, fuck you. I don't want to be with you. You're a weird guy. Don't touch my genitals is the phraseology I recall from this. And so he fires that off and wakes up the next morning, hungover. His little brother is reading his emails and quickly explains to him, you idiot, this isn't, it's basically the inflection of the German language. It's like, no, this means girl, not man, and this means Mika, not Mike, and then shows the picture that he had confused who was Mike, and it's a classic mix-em-up. And so he freaks out and tries to message her back, and at this point, she's already blocked his email.
He has an amazing email.
Oh, I was going to see if you were going to bring that up. Yeah.
Because when he gets an email, it just says "mail, motherfucker," which is great.
Mail, motherfucker.
And when he's blocked because she blocked him after he sent that nasty drunk email, the email tells him you've been blocked.
I guess they couldn't afford the actual sound drops from AOL. I mean, fuck. You're talking about a movie that had Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks at the helm. Yeah, this thing's not going to be able to afford You've Got Mail.
Well, mail, motherfucker is a lot funnier anyway.
Exactly. I was going to say, so what do? Mail, motherfucker. This here is the funniest moment that Jacob Pitts has in the movie because he walks in and he goes, Mom made waffles. And he's just eating, a waffle that he just walked upstairs from. No syrup or butter on it or anything. The way it's such an innocuous line, but the way he delivers it and the context of it and also what it means it's just very funny.
The idea that none of the subsequent, 80 minutes worth of Jacob Pitts lines were not as funny to you as this waffle line makes me really sad.
Again, I knew in 2004 that Sean William Scott was out there somewhere, and I know just as well today that he was out there somewhere pining for work.
He had moved on. He was doing Bulletproof Monk probably, or that movie with The Rock.
Yeah, I was about to say he was pretty close to
The Rundown.
That movie with The Rock. Yeah, The Rundown, and then Southland Tales. So he had the big double feature with DJ
where it all went wrong.
Oh, let's calm down on that Southlands talk dribble.
But anyway, you made out with your sister, dude. Come on. He has much funnier lines coming up.
So they realize the error of what has happened, and fuck it, no time like the present. Might as well live up while we're young. So Scotty's going to go to Berlin to talk to Mika and say, you're the one for me. And Jacob Pitts has nothing better to do, so he's like, let's go. And then they pull the old Bart on the road trick, where Bart has to become a courier to save up the money to get home. And in this case, they just are like, fuck it, we'll be a courier. We'll take a package overseas, and it's a cheaper way to get there. Takes them to the UK to begin with. And my God, the state of the green screen when they show up to the UK.
My note says, is this really London? I can't tell, and I don't care.
It definitely was, but it was not at all like Parks and Rec when they had that 2-part episode in the UK where they clearly flew the entire cast over there to do it. This is literally the Wayne's World joke of, I thought they wouldn't have flown us over. I thought they just want to save us money. And because, they're like pointing around all this green screen, and then the intern walks in the background. You can see his watch glistening off the digital effect.
I don't need them to actually shoot in London. I just need to get the feel of London. If they can capture the spirit of London, then you have me. And they do, because they cast Vinnie Jones. That's all you need. Then I buy that they're in England.
I mean, that's a very fair point.
Was your reaction to Vinnie Jones showing up the same as your reaction to Matt Damon showing up?
No.
Vinnie Jones in a movie in England? What?
That guy should be the Juggernaut. What I do appreciate in movies like this, and this I guess would be a mild compliment, is the semantics of the story matter not. As soon as they get there, it is never mentioned again whatever package they were supposed to deliver as a courier. It's just like, we don't care, you don't care. It's the old John Wayne line about, well, if you did that, then it wouldn't be a movie. But they get there, and they say there's no drinking age in England, so let's go crazy. And they go to a bar called the Feisty Goat, which is, they say, was it Man City or Man U? Was the Man U.
Man U.
And yeah, led by Vinnie Jones, who, I mean, he's fucking Vinnie Jones. You can't really get a more authentic fucking soccer hooligan character than that. And he is mad that these foreigners showed up, and they explain they're from the Ohio chapter, and they end up getting really drunk and singing My Baby Takes the Morning Train, which is just a banger of a song. So this whole sequence had me smiling, if for no other reason than that song is very solid.
I was also smiling because I like Vinnie Jones when he knows his place, which is London hooligan. That's like, that plays to his strengths.
Snatch,
which, by the way, we get another. I don't know if you recognize another Snatch alum in the movie later, but when Vinnie Jones tries to stretch his acting muscles, that's when I get nervous. And I didn't know if this movie was going to be wise enough to just let him be Vinnie Jones without trying to, don't show me Vinnie Jones having sex or Vinnie Jones like just being particularly raunchy. No, thankfully the filmmakers knew what they had and how to utilize it, and that was Vinnie Jones is just there being tough, opening beer bottles with his eyes, and just yelling obscenities at people. That's good. That's the Vinnie Jones I like. That's the Vinnie Jones I need, and no more. And it shows restraint, because I think that sometimes when you have directors that cast Vinnie Jones in their movies, they're trying to reinvent the wheel, and they're like, we're gonna give you the Vinnie Jones that you've never seen. And it's like, no, some actors that's great, but with others,
X-Men 3.
Yeah, see, I don't see him as a juggernaut. I think that was kind of a misfire. That was better on paper than when we actually got it there. Because
one of the only misfires of The Last Stand.
yes. Because when you're seeing him, you don't see the Juggernaut. You see Vinnie Jones, and that's the problem. That's not cool. But when you see him in Eurotrip, you're like, oh, that's Vinnie Jones, and it works because it's supposed to be funny.
And he ends up hitching the boys a ride to Paris as they get really drunk and pass out, and Manu's playing the Paris Football Club, and which I'm sorry, I don't know their name. I don't want to offend any of our Paris listeners or any diehard football fans. So they make it to Paris. This turns out to be kind of a blessing in disguise, though, because they're able to meet up with Michelle Trachtenberg and Travis Wester, Jenny and Jamie, okay. The twins, because they're there to, I guess that was their graduation present. They were going to go to Paris. So it's at this point the roles are specifically established. Michelle Trachtenberg is the dude girl, but is obviously scorching hot. Scotty is the man in love on a mission to find it. Cooper is the horn dog, the Stifler character that's just there to, fuck anything with two legs. And then Jamie is the practical nerd who, is very precautious about keeping wallets and money and passports in a safe place, and is also very anal retentive about his camera, this very expensive camera that he has, and is studied so much to learn for the trip that they're about to embark on. They start it by they attempt to go to the Louvre, which has a line that, living in the age of COVID, made me so fucking anxious looking at
it. It's great because, this is where the movie really starts, now that we got these four together. And this movie really reveals what it's like, what it's about. And what it's about is what I think what Sex and the City 2 tried to do. I know we briefly talked about it. I remember reading interviews about how Sex and the City 2 was trying to provide a break to its audiences, because I don't remember what was going on at the time of its release, but they're like, wouldn't it be nice if this movie was able to transport you to where do they go in Sex and the City 2? Is it Saudi Arabia, maybe?
Is it Abu Dhabi?
Or they go to Abu Dhabi, and they're like, so it'd be like you're taking a vacation with the girls. And instead it backfired because people took it as like, wow, you're robbing your expensive lifestyle in our faces. So I think a Eurotrip actually pulls it off, because what it does is it creates the kind of trip, the kind of adventure that you kind of long to have with friends. And if you can't have it in real life, you might as well just tag along with these guys. They're buddies, they're having fun, and you're having fun with them. That's really Eurotrip above like anything else. It's about just having fun in Europe with your buddies. And I think it succeeds at that.
So they're in Paris, they're waiting in the line for the Louvre, and then there's a street performer who's like doing a robot act. And I kept thinking, I know that fucker. Who is that? And I was just looking, and I was trying. You ever do that where you see someone in a movie and you don't look it up because you want to figure it out on your own?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I couldn't figure it out. So I had to, had to look it up, and it is, what is his name? JP Manu. The reason I realized he came to mind so quickly is because me and my sister recently did a rewatch of Community. He's the guy that Chang hires to be the imposter dean. He's like one of those actors that he's in so many different things, but is never in a starring role. I just recognized his face, and he was like I said, the bizarro dean in Community. So that's what came to mind.
It's pretty impressive that you recognize him under the French robot makeup.
He has very, very distinctive eyes. Much like Jim Rash does, too. And that's, I think, what I thought that was great casting in Community. Here nor there.
Does he laugh in Community the way that he laughs in this sequence?
Even if this was funny, which it's not, it just goes on way too long. And homeboy, JP Manu, he at least has some good robotic movements down. Yeah, Scotty does not.
I think that the combination of how he's moving and the sound effects that he's making, I think it sells it.
Okay. Yeah, and then they just like, at least them having a fight where in the end you got to give it props. You always got to go to the classics. In a classic, a man getting hit in the balls is never not funny. And the climax to it is the robot gets kicked in the balls and lets out a yelp of my robot balls, and then he air roar.
Again, you tell me another movie where you would see a sequence like this.
I mean, it's a fair call. But it's at this point, they get out of line for the Louvre, and they're like, all right, let's figure this out. They go out and have a fancy dinner, and they decree that they're going to take a trip across Europe that'll bring them to the destination of Berlin, to where Scotty can meet up with Mika. And from here, one of the things I did want to give the movie props for, I think a true staple of the road trip movie is the map that shows your journey that you're conquering and taking over. And a lot of times the map would be a literal map of the United States and shows like, a little character going from here to here. What I enjoyed about this was when they were at dinner, they made this, just kind of improvised map of what their voyage is going to look like. And that's the map that is used for their travel throughout the rest of the movie. Anytime you can submerge yourself completely into something to where everything about the movie, every gimmick about it is about just that, that's big thumbs up from me.
Yeah.
And they begin their voyage. They're going to Amsterdam from Paris, and they do so by train. And not that I would have known who he was in 2004, but watching this in 2020, I was like, holy shit, Fred Armisen.
I had that moment that you had before with the fake Dean, where I was like, is that, do I look it up? No, I'm going to wait and see if it's really Fred Armisen.
He might have even been one of the featured players on SNL by this point. The cast, and then there would be the featured players. I don't even know if they still do that, but yeah, obviously he's not Fred Armisen of today, and
he's not the Rockers Fred Armisen.
Yeah, back-to-back episodes for old Freddy. Yeah, he's this pervert on the train that they're on that's into groping people while you go under tunnels.
Scoozy.
Yeah, but then he speaks Spanish too. I mean, look, you, me, and Eddie have always talked about Fred Armisen's greatest quality is how racially ambiguous he is. He can play anything, and you will believe it. And this is like a melding pot of that, where he's speaking Spanish, but also using some French. At this performance, it was way before its time, way ahead of its time. Something like this today is what we deserve.
I mean, Scoozy, how can you not laugh at that?
I was curious the whole time if it was actually Fred Armisen's mustache or not. If it was something they just, Beverly Hills Ninja is the movie where the guy boomerangs a mustache onto Chris Farley's face. When I was a kid, like, for some reason, I thought that was how they put mustaches on actors in movies, is just throw them on their face, like in that movie. For many reasons, Beverly Hills Ninja eschewed my sense on reality, my vision of reality. So they get to Amsterdam. Nerd boy, why do I keep forgetting his name? Is it Jamie?
Jamie.
Okay, so Jamie is in Amsterdam and wants to go to his camera serviced. So he goes, and that's not a euphemism. And he goes...
It becomes one.
It does, absolutely. So then Cooper's like, hey, we're in Amsterdam, and goes to one of the local sex shops or sex parlors. And then so it's Amsterdam. That was honestly something I didn't really know about Amsterdam until I was older. I always had the Pulp Fiction view and just that it's where weed's legal. And then growing up and learning, what the red light district was and shit, I was like, oh, so that place is just insanity. And then, yeah, having read and listened to accounts of stories, there was a very legendary professional fighter named Bas Rutten who was from the Netherlands, and there's been some stories about him taking fellow fighters to Amsterdam and through the red light district and whatnot that have been something of legend. So I guess that's all to say that when the Contrarians record on location in Amsterdam, you'll know damn well what I'm doing. Julio will be very faithful and loyal and just smoking J's in his room. I'll be out doing what Cooper's doing, and when he shows up to club, it has some really long name. I think it has sex in it somewhere, and there's 19 X's in it.
Uh-huh.
Do you have it written down what it was?
No, but I just remember the T-shirt afterward. So I think it's one of the funniest jokes in the movie.
Free T-shirt. He goes to this sex club, and the mistress of it is Lucy Lawless, Xena, Ron Swanson's wife, and I had no recollection of her being in this movie, and also the fact that she plays
a dominatrix.
A dominatrix. just runs down the whole rigmarole. And the joke is that he didn't realize he went to the club that is basically for homosexual torture. I guess it doesn't have to be homosexual, but the idea is that some big beefy gentlemen come out and spank you, whip you. They have different tools that they use on you.
Don't they have genital clamps?
Yep. That's true as well. And then they have this massive like drill. It's like almost like a skill saw that has multiple dildos mounted on it with a laser sight, no less.
Yes, and a laser sight. So we get. Is this our first man ass in the movie when we see Jacob Pitt like bent over with the laser pointer?
It's an impress. They got a sharp sight on that too. It's like fucking Deadshot from DC. I can't believe that I forgot to write down the nude beach scene earlier in the movie, which at the time was like one of the big selling points on it. But I just glossed right over that. So it is not our first man ass in the movie. I think the idea of what is happening in the scene would have been a lot more shocking had we not seen just such a abundance of wiener earlier in the movie.
But that's great. I will fall back on my tried and true. Like, where else have you seen something like this?
Yeah, we get Jacob Pitts' ass here. That's just completely defiled by this mechanic that they're operating in Amsterdam. Because the whole joke is he can't figure out the safe word.
Right, it's a German word that's really long, and actually, so he thinks he got it right, and then turns out it wasn't the safe word. What he said was basically he was calling for the triple dildo thing that comes out later.
Release the Kraken.
Yes, and then he got a free T-shirt, which is, like I said, one of the greatest jokes ever.
Yeah.
Well, because the next morning he shows up and he's wearing the shirt. And honestly, I wish that they hadn't explained it because, Scotty asks him, he's like, what's that? And he's like, oh, free T-shirt. I wish he hadn't said anything. They hadn't addressed it. And then, it would just be for those of us smart enough to pick up that, oh, he's wearing that new T-shirt.
Because he's like limping into frame when he comes in the next day. But yeah, meanwhile, that night, Scotty and Michelle Trachtenberg went and thought they were devouring pot brownies when in fact they were just eating normal brownies, and they ended up making asses of themselves. And then Jamie went to a camera shop, and the woman was so impressed by his camera that took him out back in the alley behind the shop, gave him a Hummer, but he ended up getting mugged by Diedrich Bader. Is that guy's name?
Yep.
Okay. And
was that as big a shock of a cameo as Matt Damon?
It was
Lawless?
Categorically not as big of a shock. I mean, he's Lawrence from Office Space. That dude has done so much. He's been such a big part of King of the Hill, which I'm obviously a huge fan of. He's had so many small parts in movies here and there and done so many funny things, but he will always be Lawrence from Office Space to me. I've talked about that before with you, and if you do something so iconic, you're always going to be that guy. It's like Russell Brand. That's Aldous Snow. He will always be Aldous Snow. This guy here ran up, and the first thing I thought was two chicks at the same time. Just his line from Office Space.
Which, in Amsterdam, he was more likely to get that to happen.
Yeah, especially with the look he had, and he was a bit more clean shaven in this. But he shows up, robs them, passports, money, IDs, all gone, all down the toilet. But to his credit, Jamie's not too bothered by it because he had himself a hell of a night. So the plan now becomes that they're going to get the hell out of Amsterdam. They attempt to hitchhike to Berlin. A truck driver pulls over, and this is where Scotty's lack of knowledge in fluent German becomes apparent, as there's a massive miscommunication. He believes that the truck driver is going to take him to Berlin, when in fact he keeps saying nowhere near Berlin.
Yeah, because in Berlin he killed a man and he molested a bear and I don't know what else.
It was he stabbed a woman in a bar that he talks about, and ends up taking them to Eastern Europe in the town. I'm not sure if it's a fictional town or a real town of Bratislava. Let me see here.
The town of Comedy Gold. This is the greatest sequence in the movie.
This is real talk, Contrarian Corner, whatever. This before we ever started this podcast, there were times where me and Julio would be in our office at work together, and he would be explaining to me why this was so funny. Like, this didn't happen just once. This was multiple times. Julio would, and I had seen the movie, but he would explain to me the setup to all the jokes and just repeatedly explain why it was so funny.
But you know what I had forgotten? I can't believe I'm still laughing. Oh, what I had forgotten was that our second Snatch cameo of the night, Boris the Knife shows up, and he speaks in really old American catchphrases because he's the latest
just
show.
Gotten Miami Vice.
Yeah.
It's Bratislava, which is a real place. I did find that out.
I wonder how they like the depiction of their city. But yeah, he's great. He God, I know at some point he's like, he asks him, where's the meat? Where's the patty? Where's the beef?
No, yeah, that's when he pulls up before, like, when they're trying to get out of town, he pulls up, hey, friends, where's the beef? From the end. It's, yeah, the joke being in Eastern Europe is it's just very poor and impoverished place. And yeah, I didn't even realize that's who that actor was. Well done. Well caught. And yeah, it's in Slovakia, right on the border between Slovakia and Hungary, excuse me.
They are hungry.
They are. Yeah, but their life is not as sophisticated as elsewhere. And like Julio said, they just got Miami Vice, and it's the #1 show. And then they pull together their money as they're walking down. The thing I don't know why I laugh the hardest at in this is they're just looking, and there's these war-torn conditions, and then there's a dog with a severed human hand in its mouth. And they pull together their money, and they realize, shit, we only have $1 and 80-something cents. What can this buy? Smash cut to them in the most extravagant hotel with a buffet. This, yeah, this is so culturally insensitive. I couldn't even get behind it.
It's great though, because I'm sorry, but it reflects reality, and sometimes Alex, that attitude, what you just gave me there, this is why Todd Phillips quit comedies and went and made Joker. It's like, you have to be able to laugh at these sort of things, and I'm sorry, but this is what happens when Americans travel around the world to a country that's has lesser means than the United States. It happens when Americans go to Peru. It happens when I go to Peru. Now, I go to Peru, with dollars, and I know that it buys me a lot more than if I was using the national currency. And so just to see it represented in a movie in such a funny way, obviously it's exaggerated for comedic purpose, but the fact that we've referenced this countless times in the podcast and off the podcast with the guy, I used to say a quarter. It's actually even funnier because it gives him a nickel. Scotty tips the waiter or whatever, he tips him a nickel, and the guy's like, a nickel? I quit. I'm gonna go open my own restaurant.
The bag boy, yeah, and he slaps his manager on the way out. Yeah, but they're left with, I think they say, like, we got 27 cents, what can we do? And it goes to them at, the most raging nightclub in Bratislava. And this is where I caught on, and I had to do some reflecting in my mind. This was something I never caught the first time I saw the movie. I knew that the Scotty Doesn't Know came back because it was Cooper's ringtone at the end of the movie. Every place they go to has, like, a different version of the song, like the melody of it.
Yeah, they actually call it out, or it might have been only on my extended 2 minutes edition.
Okay.
Because when I watched it, I recognized it, and then they went all Apatow and they explained the joke again, and they were like, "Oh, this song sounds familiar," and Scotty kind of laughs, and then that's it. But to me, it's like much like with the T-shirt. It's a lot funnier if you just figure it out on your own. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so they're drinking a bunch of absinthe, and they all get, unbeknowingly really fucked up, which I remember watching this as a kid and being like, well, a teenager. Like, that can't happen. You can't take a bunch of stuff and not know that you're fucked up. Oh, to be young and naive. And they get really fucked up on absinthe. The punchline here to everything that happens is that just through the sheer machinations of clubbing, Jenny and Jamie end up dancing together and then making out while Cooper and Scotty are watching. And obviously the realization that these siblings are making out with each other leads to sheer terror and just abject silence the next day.
Brother and sister making out for the sake of a laugh.
So at this point, you didn't even bring up the funniest part of this when what's the character's name from Snatch?
Boris the Knife.
Boris the Knife pulls up and, hey, where's the beef? But he pulls up and he's driving the General Lee, like a really chopped up version of it. Because I guess, Dukes of Hazzard's big there. And ends up taking them to Berlin. They finally catch a break and they get to Berlin and they go to Mika's apartment. And unfortunately, she's left for her study program. She's in Rome for, I think they say 1 day. And she will be leaving the following day to go study abroad at sea. So she's going to be quite unreachable, I think is the verbiage they use. So they end up going to Rome. They're financed to do so because Jamie, I guess, learning the meaning of Christmas, sold his camera to pay for their travel there.
That's the part that I had completely forgotten about this movie. And that is that on the way to the third act, it actually has heart because it doesn't need to. Its mission so far has been very much to make us laugh. And nobody was going to criticize Eurotrip for not having a moment of emotional truth for any of its characters. And yet it goes there. It shows Jamie, who has made it very clear that camera is the most important thing in his life. And then he sells it so that Scotty can, find the girl of his dreams. That moment was awesome. It was unexpected. And I think it works. They managed to create a bond with these characters that's believable, to where that kind of thing doesn't come across as just cheesy. And then they punctuate it with one final joke, which is that everybody's hugging and celebrating, but then when Jenny and Jamie are about to hug, they're like, let's not do that.
They get to Rome, and as you can imagine, chaos absolutely ensues. Do they go to the Vatican? Is that where they go?
Yeah.
Yeah. They pose as Jamie being their tour guide to get in to the Vatican. And of course, he is paired up as things will go awry. And he's paired up with a tour group that doesn't have a tour guide. So now he's essentially leading Michelle Trachtenberg and then a bunch of random people he doesn't know through a tour of the Vatican. But because he's so educated from that Frommer's travel guide, he's able to just, recite page and verse everything he knows about it. Meanwhile, Cooper and Scotty are trying to follow the group that they believe Mika to be in. And I mean, this goes beyond, comedic happenstance to this is like Mr. Bean territory.
You say Mr. Bean is not funny?
Oh, Mr. Bean's hilarious, but none of those movies try to ground themselves in any sense of realism. Mr. Bean, Johnny English, all that is my shit. But here, Cooper ends up pulling the rope to signal the bell that the Pope has died, so it sends Rome into a tizzy. And then they go into, I guess, the Pope's office or, Fortress of Solitude. They're fucking around with his ring gear. And the whole punchline is Scotty puts on the Pope hat and gets tangled up in a curtain and accidentally stumbles out onto the balcony to signal that, he's the new Pope.
And it works. People buy it.
I guess, yeah. There's the one guy that they're very fixated on, that the Pope is dead. They've picked a new Pope. He's the new Pope. It's the same guy over and over again.
And then the most awesome, they saved the most awesome cameo for the end because they actually got the Pope to be there for one shot, a reaction shot where he sees the new Pope on TV and he's like, what the hell is happening?
Yes, the actual Pope was in this movie.
I mean, it's not like he had much to do, so.
They're like, fuck it, we got Damon. We can get anybody else we want. But this all leads to this big... this is something that... What was that movie with Chris Evans? It's not another teen movie. That's what they kind of make fun of in the end. And that movie was years before this. So Scotty sees Mika and is like, hey, wait there. And he rappels down and he comes. And I think we get the one actor saying, this Pope is crazy. And he runs up and tells Mika, hey, it's me, Scotty. And, I'm sorry about what I said. And I think we should be together. And because this movie has shown it has no shame, what this all concludes with is them having carnal relations inside of the confession booth.
But wasn't that cool to find out that Mika was just as sexual as the rest of them? Because usually the trope in this sort of movie is that girl, the dream girl, the unattainable girl that finally, is attained, she's better than them in the sense that, by the standard that she does not succumb to carnal desires like that. So she's pure, she's virginal. But no, here is just smash cut to them naked in the confession booth, just going at it.
I wonder how many ass doubles they had on retainer for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's Patrick Wilson. Just
damn right.
Ass doubles because, they don't pay you enough.
And then, like, the final cameo of the movie is the woman in the confessional booth is Mindy Sterling, who played Frau in the Austin Powers franchise and also had random appearances through, like, Reno 911 and things of that nature.
They never, in all of her other cameos, she never had, like, somebody's butt, like, pushed against a window in front of her face, I gather.
Like, yeah, just dead center, face-to-face contact. Apparently, she and Jeffrey Tambor were both uncredited in this. Tambor said, "Fuck that! I don't want my name on this."
And Damon, just the holy trinity of uncredited actors.
We need a picture of them, like, at the altar together, the three of them. So, of course, they have sex, and it all ends up working out with Mika and Scotty. They go to celebrate and have a lunch afterwards. One of the gentlemen from Jamie's tour comes up and says, "Hey, that was the most informative thing I've ever been on." And he says, "Oh, well, I was just reciting it from the Fromer tour guide, but I added some of my own things in it." And the guy's, it turns out he is Fromer, whatever his first name is.
It's Mr. Fromer.
Yeah, Mr. Fromer, Fromer.guide. And he invites Jamie to take up a job with him. And so Jamie's just going to stay behind. I mean, let's just ignore the fact that I don't even know if their parents know where they are, but he's going to stay behind and work in Rome.
I mean, he'll be fine. He can clearly take care of himself. He becomes a new man after that experience in Amsterdam. He's a lot more confident, and I think obviously that allows him to sell the camera because the camera was, I think, like his security blanket, and then once he got a blowjob, he didn't need it anymore.
This is his chastity belt.
Yeah.
So he's going to stay behind. We get like the parting shot of the other three saying, "All right, it's time to go back and, got to do what we got to do." So they leave on the plane, both feeling a bit dejected from not having any, as they refer to it, crazy European sex on the trip. Cooper and Jenny end up hooking up in the bathroom. And everyone ends up at college. Jenny and Cooper, I guess, are a couple now. Scotty's roommate at school ends up being Mika, as she says. I guess they thought I was a guy.
Going back a little bit to Cooper hooking up with Jenny, I think it's very telling that ultimately he ends up having a relationship with a woman that he didn't see as a woman. So if that's like, I think, kind of splitting the difference between actually having a relationship with a guy and having a relationship with a woman. It's like, well, okay, well, my girlfriend's going to be the girl that I don't really see as feminine. That is kind of a progressive, subversive even, subtext to put in this type of movie. Again, because they spent 90 minutes making gay jokes. Isn't it funny that this dude might like this dude? Or isn't it funny that this dude touched this dude inappropriately? But in the end, I think that it's just, like I said, hidden underneath it all. It's a little bit of a more gay-friendly message, or at least trying to be gay-friendly. There's more layers to Cooper and the movie than you might think at first.
There's just an absolute downpour, a torrential downpour of straws on Julio right now, and he is just reaching for them with such vigor. But like with any movie worth its weight, we do get an actual the end that flashes upon the screen, and it's brought to us by the little flying fairy that they saw once they had partaken in an absinthe, and it says something like, "This happy ending's bullshit," and then flies away. Total fuck you mentality from the turn of the millennium people.
Well, and then they give you a reprise of the full Matt Damon performance over the end credits.
Yes, and did you watch it through that completely?
Yeah, I mean, I was not paying attention the entire time because I was just writing stuff down, but Yeah.
So
Why?
did you catch at the end where he like does when he shakes his head out and has his tongue out and like a scream goes across? Like
Yeah.
they used the sound clip of Howard Dean's scream from his presidential campaign that year.
What?
Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, all right. So there is something that's a lapse in coverage as far as your time in America. His name was Howard Dean. Now I'm questioning myself. Yeah, Howard Dean was a guy who was going to run for president in 2004, and I can't remember if he was going to run as Democrat or not. But either way, he did like this one speech, and it's so funny now because of the insanity that he was Democrat, but the insanity of our public office has become. He did one rally where he ended a speech like just kind of rallying the troops, and then he yelled and he went, "Ah!" Ended his whole campaign, ended his whole bid. Then fucking who ended up getting it? John Kerry ended up getting it in 2004. But so that was like a huge joke for a while. I'll have to send you the actual clip, but I assume there's people that are listening to this that understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the Howard Dean scream. And if you do, watch Eurotrip to the very end, because that's what's featured right at the very end of the credits.
Third in Iowa, we would have given anything for that. And you know something? Not only are we going to New Hampshire, Tom Harkin, we're going to South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arizona and North Dakota and New Mexico. And we're going to California and Texas and New York. And we're going to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington and Michigan. And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House. Yeah!
That's amazing. So it's not Damon doing the scream. It's the movie put the actual scream over Damon's face.
Yeah, so Damon just lip synced the song, and then I guess they just told him, "Hey, scream at the end," and then he did, and then they put Howard Dean's. You want to talk about carnal yelling? That's exactly what this scream by him was.
Brilliant. This movie does not let go until the very end.
It truly does not. So from a movie that took us into discussion of the 2004 presidential election. We started talking about the 2020 presidential election, ended in 2004. I can only wonder where Real Talk is going to take us, but let's go ahead and move on over.
Let's go to Real Talk.
That was a pretty wild night, eh? Yeah, pretty wild. Pretty wild. I know Howie was out of control. How about you guys? Did you,
All right, look. We were really drunk, things got a little crazy, and Jamie kissed me. Let's just forget about it, okay?
Okay, fine. I'll give it a rest. Jamie, can I borrow your Fromers? Oh, here it is, Bratislava. Huh. Capital of Slovakia. Oh, here's a fun fact. You made out with your sister, man!
Shut up!
My friends, where is the beef?
All right, I am recording for Real Talk for Eurotrip.
All right, Eurotrip, once again, released on February 20th of 2004. Oh, that makes sense now. They're trying to target the Valentine's Day crowd, I guess.
Such a romantic movie.
Well, no, that's not true, because Valentine's Day would have been, if that came out on a Friday, it would have been Saturday. So, I don't know. Trying to get the overflow. The dudes that fucked up on Valentine's Day having to take their girl out for a date the next weekend. A budget of $25 million with a box office return of a little bit under $21 million. Again, this did not do much commercially when it came out, but has since, like I said, have found a certain level of fame. I guess you could almost refer to it as a cult classic in some aspects. Written by Jeff Schaffer, Alec Berg, and David Mandel. Based on what I read, it sounded like they all took turns directing, even though Schaffer is the only one who got a directing credit. But they all kind of were interchangeable throughout the process.
Did they split the shoot by country? Because that would be awesome. Berg is like, I want Amsterdam. I want the triple dildo.
It's according to the commentary track, all scenes were filmed in Prague, the Czech Republic, especially in the streets of Rudolfinum. I really need to spruce up on my pronunciation of foreign countries. Foreign to me.
You want to be able to pronounce that safe word when you go to Amsterdam.
Yeah, I'd be awful at that. I wouldn't get myself into a situation like that in the first place, though.
Bullshit.
Again,
come on. You're in Amsterdam.
Dude, no, but I'm not going to like a club like that. Like Amsterdam has like the red light district where the girls are like in the window that you can go up and say, "Hey, I'd like to, have a drink with you," type thing. And then that's way more my speed. Of course, my lightweight ass, if I was in Amsterdam, I'd go out and have one edible and then have to retire to the room for the night. I'd talk a big game. What I would do is I'd get like an edible or like a really good joint, and go get like a girl in the red light district, and then it would be like Joaquin Phoenix in The Master when that girl goes on a date with him and he passes out at the restaurant. That's like what it would be like if I ever went to Amsterdam. But again, to reiterate, the majority of this movie was filmed in Prague, which is funny and fascinating. I guess it was obvious that they green screened a shit ton of the stuff in the UK, but I guess I didn't know it was to that extent.
I mean, as long as you don't green screen the fun, which they didn't, it's all good.
Oh, that was tremendous. 47% on Rotten Tomatoes. We're going to have a hell of a time talking about this. Julio, let's just go ahead and get into what were these critics? What were they fired up about, one way or the other?
Again, a mix of fresh and rotten. This time we'll start with rotten. Jake Euchre from F5, Wichita, Kansas, says, maybe there really are people out there who just can't get enough of the kind of joke where the punchline is that a character is gay. Or the Pope. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's not that I can't get enough, but I can say that sometimes it's still funny. Just like the punchline being that a character is straight can also be funny.
Correct.
I mean, I understand what he's going for, and we shall talk about it. Stephanie Zacharek hits us with a fresh one from Salon.com. She says, just when you begin to wonder if it's ever going to get funny or if it's going to be merely desperate all the way through, it lifts off like a wobbly helicopter and somehow it keeps flying.
I wonder where she thought it got funny.
Yeah, I wonder where she thinks that liftoff is. Is it the Matt Damon part? Because that's pretty early on.
Yeah, that's like first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Rotten from Jonathan Foreman, New York Post, says, a lazy and uninspired knockoff of the hilarious 2002 movie Road Trip. And I take issue with this, Alex, because I don't think these movies are alike at all.
Road Trip was 2002? I thought that was 2000. Continue.
I mean,
yeah, Road Trip's 2000.
Jonathan Foreman might be wrong. He's wrong about his opinion.
He is mistaken.
Yeah, about many things. And finally, Steve Rhodes from Internet Reviews gives it a fresh quote with, it'll have you laughing so hard you might injure yourself. I would trade all of the American Pies for Eurotrip.
Damn.
Would you trade all of the American Pies for Eurotrip?
No, American Pie 2 is I have a very strong attachment to that movie, and it's also very funny. The first American Pie, when it came out, it was, I don't even remember if I saw it when it came out, but it was a cultural happening for
pies everywhere.
12-year-old boys. Yeah, pies everywhere. And shit, it's given Eugene Levy a career. That's the best thing I can say about it. But no, I'll say this. I would give up American Pie, American Pie 3, and wait, what is it? Is it American Pie 2, Wedding, and then Reunion?
Yes. Or maybe Reunion and then Wedding. Either way, there's only 4. Yeah. Plus American Pie Presents Bandcamp and I don't know what else.
Oh, yeah. American Pie 2 is the only one I would not part with. The rest of them, fuck it, take it. I'll spare those for Eurotrip. Road Trip is better. Road Trip is the king of the...
No.
Road Trip is the king of the sex comedies, of the turn of the millennium sex comedies. I don't know what your beef is with it. It's wrong. It's misguided.
I don't have a beef. I don't understand your fascination with it.
It's Todd Phillips' best movie. No, that's not true. Hated is Todd Phillips' best movie, but it's a close second. Well, okay. So this isn't a talk about Road Trip. To me, the way what I took away from Road Trip, or what I take away from it, is every one of the tropes that these movies try to hit, that one succeeds at in a way that the others don't. And it also features the best use of Tom Green ever, which proves that Tom Green siphoned into a bottle can produce consistently funny things. Well, so that's my take on Road Trip.
You could say the same about Damon in this one. Best use of Matt Damon in a movie.
Oh, okay. We're in real talk, dude. Don't try to sell me your bullshit here. Even though, and we'll get to Matt Damon, fuck it, we'll just save him for the finale when we get to that, because that, again, that's what this movie is known for in terms of, besides Scotty doesn't know, people that have seen this movie, they know the Matt Damon cameo. I guess just starting off, getting into this right off the bat, a film like this doesn't necessarily age well in 2020, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's the idea of the white horny comedy is nothing new, and the idea of those movies having some homophobic humor in them is nothing new. You know, you had Porky's and Animal House, and then I'm trying to think into the 90s what some of the sex comedies were. I mean, Half Baked is a movie like this to a certain extent. Even, 200 Cigarettes is kind of a movie about people trying to get laid. And so it's absolutely nothing new. That being said, the homophobic comedy did, based on the movies that I've seen, it did get a bit heavier at the turn of the millennium with the American Pies and, Road Trips. And of course, the movie we're discussing here today, Eurotrip. There was some, in my opinion, a bit more horrifying trends in movies like Animal House, where it was like taking advantage of girls that were passed out drunk. That's a bit more off-putting to me than what we're talking about here. But obviously, homophobia, off-putting. The comedy of that does not hold up today. It's why American Reunion, which was the one that came out a few years ago, tanked. It's why, what was the movie I referenced at the first half? Sex Drive. I think Sex Drive is awesome. I think it's hilarious, and I think James Marsden is particularly great in it. But these movies that have elements of homophobic comedy and also the domineering masculinity in them, where it's the male characters that basically control everything that goes on, they had their time in the sun. It's time to move on. And that's those movies that I mentioned. There have been plenty others since then, but those are two of the big ones that came out and actually felt like there was some momentum behind them. The time has passed. And, what we've talked about here with, kind of going back and combing through the past of things that are problematic and whatnot, I think there's a balance to it. And Julio, I'm going to let you talk at some point. I know I'm kind of going off here on my own.
I'm letting you set the table.
Okay. People that come along with like movies like this, if it had between the, Julio and I's age range, if they were born, 10 years earlier, 10 years older, this kind of shit may not resonate at all with them. And that's understandable. I feel like being able to watch this and call out that some of what it does clearly does not age well. Like the movie Freaks I watched recently, and I was like, hey, this doesn't age very well. Still kind of fucking scary to watch this. It's I can't help the time frame I was raised in and the things that we laughed at the time. And, some of the things that I laughed at this time are a lot different than what I laughed at when I saw this when I was a teenager. And I feel that it's, I don't know, it's hard to, you don't want to vilify an entire thing just in, people in it, because what they were doing was not necessarily wrong. It's what the expectations or what was acceptable at the time was wrong. And like you said, though, I'm glad that over the past few years we've been able to flip the script of making jokes about how uncool straight people can be in certain situations. Like Parks and Rec I referenced earlier, one of the hardest times I ever laughed at that show was the joke of April's boyfriend showing up and saying he was dressed like a straight person, and then Paul Schneider walked into frame dressed exactly like him. That I laughed so fucking hard at that. And so I'm glad that this kind of has turned around in a certain sense. It's just, it's hard because it feels like sometimes they want to write off things completely. And for someone like myself, not just from a homophobic standpoint, but also, like I said, the domineering masculinity, I'm glad we conquered that, but still I can't act like movies like this, Road Trip, American Pie, didn't play a huge part in my adolescence and were things that I enjoyed. And I wouldn't want to act like that because they were there and they happened and I enjoyed them at the time. I don't know if I'm going to say I walked away from this enjoying it, but there are some things that are very funny that fall outside of what we're discussing here. But Julio, it's a difficult thing with art of any ilk. And, I wouldn't say this is art in the same way I would say The Departed is art. Yes, this movie does not deserve to be in the National Film Registry or anything, but I think it's definitely a time capsule that is worthy of scrutiny, but also kind of examination.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I had first of all, I laughed a lot. But I also, it gave me pause a lot, mainly because I knew we were going to be talking about it. If I was watching the movie and didn't have to have a discussion about it afterwards, then I wouldn't give it a second thought. I might give it a fleeting thought, but not enough to where I felt that I needed to articulate my thoughts. But in this case, I have to. So I brought up as a joke, the fact that, Todd Phillips doesn't make comedies anymore because he's not allowed to be edgy with his comedy or whatever, which is kind of like a bullshit thing. I think he's just resisting to, I guess, move on with the rest of the world. I think that once upon a time it was okay for was it Mickey Rourke?
Mickey Rooney. You're thinking of Breakfast at Tiffany's,
Mickey
right?
Rooney. Once upon a time it was okay for Mickey Rooney and Breakfast
I mean, it would
at
have been
Tiffany,
awesome if it was Mickey Rooney.
And, John Wayne playing Genghis Khan and blackface was okay. And, there are things that are a product of their environment, the time when they were made. And, the people making them, like you said, they didn't, it's almost like they didn't know any better. Maybe sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But as society moves on, different things become more acceptable. We learn to do things differently, and we learn why some things maybe, it's like, oh, this used to be funny, but now it's actually offensive because, whatever. I think we kind of adapt. And obviously, Todd Phillips, and anybody, they have every right to say, like, well, if it's going to be like that, then it's not fun anymore, and I don't want to play. That's fine. But what I'm interested in is my experience. And so when I'm watching this, and something like the Fred Armisen sequence comes on, and I was laughing, dude. But I was thinking, what is it that I find funny about this? Because honestly, it's not the fact that he is all over Jamie. It's not that I think it's funny that Fred Armisen, a guy, is trying to molest Jamie, who's another guy, right? But I also know that I would find it very unfunny if it was Fred Armisen trying to molest a girl. So the fact that it's two dudes really is playing on my response to that scene.
Yeah.
But what I find funny is his face. That's really his face and the way he says "scoozy." Like, that's what makes me laugh. Not the, oh, haha, he's touching a dude, right? So there's different elements. Like, there's what makes me laugh, and there's also what makes me not recoil from the setup. And that is, it's like if you get into like the analytical part of your brain, then you're trying to figure out, okay, but why? What? Because shouldn't I recoil at the idea of anybody being potentially molested, right? So what? It's because, well, we grew up basically where comedies and humor was conditioned us to think, well, if it happens to a girl, it's bad. If it happens to a guy, it's funny. In this context of a raunchy comedy or whatever. That's not, like the usual thing that I'm thinking if I'm watching one of these movies, but it came up and it just led me to think about like all the other instances. I mean, you texted me, you were like, what, 10, 15 minutes into the movie? I was already almost finished with it. When you text me, you're like, there's a lot of homophobia in this movie. It's like, yeah, noticeable. I mean, Cooper is constantly like, he's basically a walking no homo, right? It's like, he keeps making these jokes. I was like, but I'm not gay. And a lot of it, like I said, a lot of the humor, I don't find that it's come from there, but it also doesn't turn me off. It just
doesn't add to anything.
Yeah, it doesn't add anything. And I think that as the years have gone by, like we're 16 years later, and it's just noticeable. It's just waving a flag. It's like, that's not the kind of thing that you should be saying. And I don't think it's bad that we don't say that kind of stuff or that we don't make those jokes anymore. It was like, clearly it wasn't necessary,
I think it's what's funny that you're saying all this, and I'm just thinking of that this was a year away from The Office starting on NBC,
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found that show endlessly fascinating in the degree of that show still does that, gay haha humor, but the characters react to it. It was like in real time they were making those jokes and showing they weren't okay. And I guess the only reason I brought that up is because I didn't realize until I just saw the numbers that it literally started a year after this movie.
Yeah, there was a shift, I guess. Even something like early on, Cooper says something like, "Oh, that sounds super gay," but that's not. See, so his line is not funny, but the follow up is funny because then Michelle Trachtenberg says, "But I'm a girl."
Yeah,
and so that part is funny. It's not that he's using gay as a substitute for like, oh, that's really like effeminate or whatever, But what's funny is that he's using it on a girl who he happens to see as somebody who's not feminine. And so there's like more than that. And I think that that's kind of the story throughout this movie, that there's like a lot of really lame shit that suddenly finds itself elevated by some stuff that's really clever. And it's just a constant back and forth. Like the first maybe 30 minutes of the movie, I wasn't sure. I kept thinking of how when we were recording The Rocker and we mentioned that we're doing Eurotrip next, I very confidently said, yeah, Alex, this is not even a guilty pleasure. I really like this movie. And then as I was watching, I was like, do I really like this movie now that I'm watching it? Because I'm cringing a lot and I'm kind of like, not being as enthusiastic with it. Even after Scotty Doesn't Know, which I think it's definitely a high point. And then it kind of like finds its legs. And I think that there's a lot of things that make me laugh.
It's a bumpy road, but there's a lot of things in it. I forgot Jeffrey Tambor was in it, and specifically he has one part that made me laugh really hard where it shows him and his wife out on the porch, and he's like, "Where's Scotty?" And it's like, "Oh, Cooper said they were going camping." He's like, "All right," and then I can't remember what their little boy's name is, but she's like, "Well, where's Buddy?" And he goes, "Fuck if I know." And then it just cuts to whatever's going on. Jeffrey Tambor we discussed in The Hangover. He is great in everything, so it's not like I'm breaking news with that. But yeah, it's a movie that's sprinkled with some quizzical cameos, and the Vinnie Jones scene is fun. It seems like for the things that we're harping on, and they deserve to be, there's still this innocence about it that, I don't know, like taking it back to Road Trip, like I said, I know we weren't going to watch this, but like the idea of that movie is so phallocentric. This dude cheats on his girlfriend and then has to get to his girlfriend before she finds out he cheats on him or cheated on her. Excuse me. Even I lost sight of the plot there. Way to go, Todd Phillips. And with this, it's still this idea of this guy going to find this girl and tell her he's in love with her. And obviously there's a lot of other things riddled in there, but the idea of it is innocent enough that when you have these sequences like the My Baby Takes the Morning Train sequence with Vinnie Jones and all the other soccer hooligans, I laughed at that. That song's, I love that song. It makes me think of Seinfeld, but it's such an easy go-to. And then when it cuts to all them drunk around the piano singing it together, there's these sequences in the movie, exactly like you said, that it's like Bambi on ice pretty much. Like the movie itself, its feet are slipping out from under it consistently. But when they are able to, prop themselves up, there's some good stuff to it. And exactly what you said. If we didn't have this podcast and if I didn't have to take notes and think analytically about these things, this movie would just zing right past me. And I think that's it's me. I don't know why I would ever in a situation have to think about this movie so much, but it really made me like really deep prod and think about movies and TV at this time. And obviously it turns it up a bit with the vulgarity and everything, but I've talked to women that are obviously now grown women who were girls or teenagers when things like this were really prevalent, and it did set a bad standard, like the idea of every woman in this movie being thin to almost like an upsetting degree, and just the idea of these men fawning after these unattainable levels of beauty women. And I think things like this, it's easy as, in my case, a white man, and in the age bracket that I am, to look past that. But I think there's a lot of interesting trends that were in this movie that were damaging. But then when it comes back to it, like I said, when you put that aside, there's still some clever writing here, and I think it's I guess I would say I think it's worth a view. It's just there's just it's almost like you need a disclaimer before you watch something of this. Before what do you call it? A trigger warning?
Yeah, a trigger warning. Well, to somebody who's not familiar with this type of movie, I would think, I would understand if somebody much younger than us watched it and was horrified, thinking that it's insensitive. But again, like I was just thinking, here's another like example, which is like the whole thing with Cooper at the dominatrix and like the dudes and the triple dildos and all that stuff. Like on the surface, right? The joke's like, oh, this dude who's straight got like molested by the dominatrix and like these guys and the dildos. But that's not really what makes it funny, right? What makes it funny is like, or at least to me, is the ridiculousness of all the business with the safe word, right? That he can't read the safe word. First, he thinks he's not going to need the safe word. Then he needs the safe word, but he can't read it. Then when he finally reads it, he mispronounces it, so he ends up bringing something worse. And it's like, to me, it would be just as funny if you had, instead of the 3 dildos, if it was just like a fucking tiger that came out or something,
Yeah. The payoff is him limping the next morning wearing the event shirt.
Exactly. That's what's really, really funny. But like I did in the other example, swap Cooper for Jenny. If this was happening to Jenny, then it's not funny anymore. It's like a horror movie. Then it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, But it's like, but why? It's like a simple like gender swap because we're conditioned to, react a certain way, changes everything. And so that's something that we just can't, I think that when you're like whether you're a filmmaker or you're part of the audience, you just can't ignore it anymore, right? It's just something that you have to keep in mind when you're watching a movie, when you're, especially if you're thinking about a movie, if you're like talking about a movie. I don't think that when they were designing the sequence, I would imagine there was never a question of like, oh, which character do we put here? But there was probably a question of like, okay, what's funny, right? Well, what's going to be the funniest would be to get the horn dog character into this situation where he ends up being, sexually abused, but in a funny way. It's just so weird to even talk about. But there stands the movie. And, when you watch it, at least, like I said, I was laughing. I thought that they pulled it off.
Yeah, I guess all this that I'm going on about and what you and I are discussing is, I think anyone that watched this, like you said, someone younger than us, 10 years younger than us, would be horrified by it. It's us saying, yeah, I get all that, but it's still like, we still find it funny because it was like basically a product of our time. Like those other movies, like Animal House I referenced earlier. There's some fucking horrifying stuff in that movie that happens, and that's like almost just played for throwaway laughs. But again, it's that expression of it's of its time is a real thing. But yeah, it's funny then to like dissect these jokes in the movie specific to Eurotrip that we're talking about here and figure out why it's funny. And again, yeah, I don't really care about the homocentric overtones, the homosexual overtones of the Fred Armisen character. Just him being greasy and gross is funny. And again, that's probably just through like 2020 lenses of, it's Fred Armisen. And then, yeah, like the dominatrix stuff just got stupid. But like I said, him limping with the t-shirt on, that's a very funny visual. And, we've focused so far on just this because it is the proverbial elephant in the room, something that deserves addressing, because we can't just be like, man, when he called him gay, that was so funny, because that's not the case. But it's the main thing is I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way because there's shit that's funnier in the movie and potentially more problematic than that. That shit of making Eastern Europe just look poor and awful. I'm sorry, that shit is fucking hilarious. That is, if I was from there, I could see being offended by it. But that idea they have a dollar and 80 cents or whatever, and they're just living like kings. That whole sequence is possibly my favorite part in the movie because they're literally like a vagrant just counting the change in their hand, and then it smash cuts to Michelle Trachtenberg being pampered in the big jacuzzi with the face mask on and everything. And like you said, the payoff when he gives the nickel to the guy and he just he looks like he's seen the face of God. A nickel. And he turns around and slaps his boss. I quit. I opened my own hotel.
Yeah. But see, I agree. I think that's the funniest sequence in the movie. And I'm more willing to go to bat to it. And maybe history will prove me wrong. Maybe we're, a few years removed from it just being completely reprehensible to make those kind of jokes. Or maybe it already happened and I just haven't caught up yet. There's been a few times where I've made jokes about my home country, about Peru, in that vein, and then I'll be like, did I go too far? But I don't think so. I don't know. I think that there's a balance between, like, when you make it clear that you're joking and you don't really believe something, versus when you're just saying that something's funny because you don't respect it, I guess. I guess jokes, like making fun of somebody being gay versus, I don't know, I think that's a more sensitive issue versus saying that there's a whole nation in Europe that's like this post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
Because when I see the depiction of that nation, that European nation, I'm like, clearly this is an exaggeration, and this is meant to be funny, whereas or it's an exaggeration for the sake of comedy. Whereas, like, when I see Fred Armisen molesting someone in the train, and the joke is that, oh, he's molesting someone, I was like, yeah, but molesting anyone is not funny. So I don't know. I think that there's a line there, and it might be blurry, and maybe somebody that actually works in comedy could articulate it better than I do. But when I see it, I never felt that it was problematic when I saw what they were doing, because it's just so, like, outrageously fake. It's just a fantasy. There's no way that's really, I don't think that anybody watching it would think that it's anything but just a made up scenario for a set of jokes.
Yeah, it crosses from, like, being just, yeah, exactly, for the sake of, like, something being a punchline to just being almost fantastical and just absolutely absurd. Because that's what's funny. If they had like $300 and it got them all that wouldn't be funny. But it's the fact that they have like $1.50 or $1.75, and I mean, it's just becomes so absurd that it makes it entertaining.
I mean, I could see a scenario also where you just pick the wrong country to make fun of, or the wrong, like, setup. But even then, I don't know, man. That's the thing. That's why I do understand when I see comedians that are frustrated because they feel that they're being restricted. Where, okay, well, if everything is sacred, then you're really limiting what I can do with my craft or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it could just be coming from my own ignorance. Maybe I am just not fully immersed, fully aware of what the situation is in Western Europe, and maybe this is actually really insensitive to be making fun of that. It's like, would you be okay if they were in, like, I don't know, Ethiopia, and they were just making fun of, like, kids that were starving out there?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I can see, like, a really dark comedy that would go there. It's not this movie though, so I don't know. I think it's pretty complicated. For what it's worth, I felt that in this movie it worked. Like, they managed to be ridiculous enough to where it wasn't offensive, and it just turns out to be, like, the funniest thing. And it's not just the money. I mean, the money is always the thing that I quote the most for. Like I said, the whole thing with Miami Vice and Boris the Knife quoting, using really old American,
driving the General Lee. Yeah.
That was just so funny. I was laughing out loud. And by then, the movie had me. Like I said, I was kind of shaky on it for about half an hour. But by the time they get to Western Europe, it's full on.
It gets to a point where it's just so dumb that it's almost hard to be offended by it. We've talked about movies that take things way too seriously. What's that Robert Pattinson movie? Remember Me? Like, that's the type of thing that I could see someone getting, like, offended at, because a movie that serves itself so heavy-handedly, and then the twist is that it's 9/11. Like that, fuck off. Something like this is just... I'm fine with someone saying it's dumb and that comedy doesn't work for me, but it's almost to the point where it's too stupid to get offended by it. Cooper, the horn dog, crazy, the Stifler side character, the two lines he had that made me laugh the hardest had nothing to do with sex at all. I meant what I said in the first part, where he just pops into frame and goes, "Mom made waffles." That made me laugh. And then at the end, when they're leaving Jamie, and Scotty comes up and, as like a goodwill or a sign of, thank you, he gets him a disposable camera. And then Cooper, like, realizes what's happening, and he goes, "Yeah, that's from both of us." That it was just so dumb. It made me laugh. And everything, we didn't even talk about in Contrarian's Corner, everything that goes on where he's occasionally checking in with his job in America and he ends up getting that guy fired. that was all really funny to me too.
Yeah, I think he's really good. Do you like Jacob Pitt? Like, would you say he's the highlight out of the four?
Oh yeah, the guy who plays Scotty's awful. No offense, Mr. Meklowitz, but not a fan. Michelle Trachtenberg, it almost seems like stunt casting in this movie because they didn't really give her much to really do. It's just like, hey, Harriet the Spy, or for you weirdos, here's Buffy's sister. Because there's the one shot of her in a bikini, and then she kind of, I don't know, turns into a horn dog at the end. But yeah, so Jacob Pitts, even though he's just playing the Vegas baby character, he seems the most natural of everybody, and he's always got like a shit-eating grin on his face throughout the entire film. And yeah, I guess because I don't really know him from much else besides Sex and the City, I just always associate this movie with him.
Yeah, he's easily my favorite. I didn't dislike Scotty, but he doesn't get to do anything. I mean, I think other than his robot fight, which now that we're in real talk, do you really not like his robot?
It was funny for like 30 seconds, but that scene goes on for like 3 or 4 minutes. It just gets to the point where it's worth it in the end, though, with the guy with the way he sells going down, going error. That's funny. But again, this movie, for a movie that lives by the Mattis rule, there's so much in this that's just like the directors were just doing the, stretch it out motion when writing this, because that scene goes on forever. And then just the sequence at the end in Rome, it is not funny at all to me. The whole thing of wearing the Pope hat, the hat catching on fire. Like I said, it goes from this movie of, even in a really extreme degree, just kind of funny happenstance, to just absolute Mr. Bean level absurdity that it loses me there at the end.
So that was a bridge too far. Scotty becoming the Pope for like 5 minutes.
A bridge too far. That's right. Yeah, it was too much. But Vinnie Jones shows back up, and he was one of my favorite parts in the movie, specifically when they're driving in Paris and they've got their double-decker bus, and they're driving on what they perceive to be the right side of the road, but it's the wrong side in Paris. And he's just screaming at people, take your garlic bread, you dosser, and doing the fuck you British sign. And it is what it is, man. It's a turn of the millennium comedy. Again, I kind of dipped my toe into this, and Contrarian's Corner, for any teenager, there is always going to be a certain nostalgia that comes along with those first couple R-rated movies you saw in the movie theater. I saw this with my high school buddy. I think his name was Rex, if I recall correctly. And there's always a sense of nostalgia that comes with that. And for me, this and Freddy vs. Jason and Old School are like those movies that were the first ones I saw in the theater as a teen. You feel like you're getting away with something, or you're like in a club that you're not supposed to be in, because you're only used to seeing this shit with your parents and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, because of that, I have the sentimental attachment to this movie. But yeah, watching it as a 33-year-old, it's just fucking dumb. There's like some good comedy in it, but it's just very stupid. But I can lend credence to your claim that you would call it a guilty pleasure, because as we know, I have plenty Ready to Rumble as an example of one of mine similar to this, of just absolutely ridiculous, but has something about it, a charm that I cling to.
Yeah. My thing with Road Trip, I don't remember anything about it. I mean, I remember it, but I don't have the big signifiers like American Pie has the pie. It was like, if nothing else, you remember Jason Biggs fucking the pie. And Eurotrip, to me, it's like Scotty doesn't know, and the twins making out, and of course like a nickel, I quit, all that stuff. I have like a lot of memories. I've seen Road Trip at least twice, and I remember the snake, which is not, I don't imagine that's the high point of the movie. I remember Tom Green spending the entire movie away from everybody else. He stays home.
Yeah,
but that's it. I maybe I need to watch it again. I know DJ Qualls is in it, but I don't remember anything about his character. It might be, I mean, even, Old School has, what's Will Ferrell's name? The Tank. But, him running naked down the street. Like, there's like the iconic moments. Tell me an iconic moment from Road Trip.
Are you like asking me for real?
Yes.
Oh, when DJ Qualls dances to It's Tricky by Run DMC in the Black Fraternity House.
Yes, I don't remember that. Sounds great, though.
For shame.
But he's not even the main character.
He's the one that took the most away from it, probably, at least for the short term. But, I mean, that's all fair. That's all fair and good. So, as we look to wrapping this up and moving into, as I said we would keep as the main event. Matt Damon's cameo in this. I mean, it's so hyperbolic, but it really is one of the more like stunning cameos, just because it's, again, you know, we would always have in those Austin Powers movies, the 3 Austin Powers movies, there were so many cameos throughout those, but they all kind of made sense because it was a high profile comedy that featured, in most cases, you know, A-list actors and whatnot. What are movies known for their cameos also? I'm blanking here. Should have done a bit more research.
The Muppet movies?
Muppet movies. There you go. That's actually what I was thinking of, and I couldn't remember. Alan Arkin in the Muppets movie where he's the disgruntled tour guide. Yeah, all these things that we mentioned, these are all things that make sense. Matt Damon being in this is crazy, and it's the one thing most people remember it for, and it's why it's garnered such a cult following, legacy, however you want to word it.
He was an Academy Award winner by now, right?
Yeah. And so just doing a bit of research on this, there's a bunch of different outlets that covered it, and apparently it all spawned from a Q&A he did. So I'm just going to briefly read through this story. Eurotrip is a 2014 comedy about a high school grad and his friends embarking on, well, a trip across Europe. It was a box office failure, earning only $18 million in the U.S., but it has gathered a cult following. One of the reasons for the cult following is a surprise out-of-nowhere cameo by Matt Damon. More specifically, it features a pierced Damon with a shaved head singing a rock song called Scotty Doesn't Know. The movie didn't feature any other A-list celebrities, so why was Damon in this movie? In an Ask Me Anything on Reddit, I believe the kids call those an AMA, Matt Damon explained, so Eurotrip was written by 3 guys I went to college with, Alex Schaefer, Jeff Berg, and Dave Mandel, Damon said. And the 3 of them are 3 of the best comedy writers in the world. Damon added that the 4 of them had a running joke of when one of them did something worth celebrating. We'd had 1 bottle of champagne. We sent it to them first because they had been hired on Seinfeld. Then they sent it to us when we sold Good Will Hunting. The champagne bottle would be sent back and forth to congratulate each other without ever being opened. Years later, Matt Damon was in Prague, which again, to reiterate, was where Eurotrip was filmed, and he was shooting The Brothers Grimm at the same time Eurotrip was also being filmed. His old friends called Matt, and they said, will you come and play this kind of insane, bad version of a suburban, punk band guy? And I said, yeah, I'm in Prague. Matt said for the role in Brothers Grimm, he had to wear a wig, knowing his hair wasn't going to affect the filming of the movie. He told the Eurotrip guys, just shave my head, let's just go for it. As for the song, Scotty Doesn't Know, it's not really Matt Damon singing. It's a band from Boston called Lustra. Damon explained, one of my college roommates is actually in that band, Jason, and the song was actually written by one of my college roommate's brothers. Matt added, it was kind of a family affair. Films like Good Will Hunting and The Martian may have won a bunch of awards, but do they have Matt Damon lip-singing to a pop song about sleeping with another guy's girlfriend? Probably not. And so that kind of, in a nutshell, is the reason why Matt Damon showed up in Eurotrip, which makes it even kind of cooler that he was just kind of friends with the guys making the movie.
It does. But I'll say this, Alex. You remove Matt Damon from this, and you just have a random dude singing the song, and it's still funny. It's special because you have Matt Damon, but the situation of having, again, it's just so outrageous to have somebody singing about it. Didn't they say that it's like their 1-year anniversary or something? They've been cheating on Scotty for a year.
Yeah, happy anniversary, baby. Yeah.
It's just great. That situation is funny, and the reaction that they set up, just Scotty's there drinking while everybody else is partying, everybody else is chanting Scotty Doesn't Know. It's just great.
But that was Eurotrip. Man, it is dumb. It's got some good laughs in it, but for all the things I said positively and, nostalgically about it, it is still a stupid movie with a very, very, very flimsy script that I would say I would give it a D+ is with the rating I would give it, or grade I would give it rather.
Yeah, I am torn between 2 and 2.5, which is funny because before this rewatch, I would have given it 3 at least. But it's still a movie I like, and still a movie I'll happily rewatch because, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's that I find really funny. I think I'm gonna stick with 2.5. I think because I can't deny how hard I laughed at some of the things, and that entire Eastern Europe section is really funny, and Scotty Doesn't Know is great, and I could quote Jacob Pitt a lot. This is not where I parked my car. It's so dumb.
They kind of give up on that halfway through. Yeah, I wish I could have gotten some more to that, but yeah.
Yeah. It's not a terrible movie. Just, watcher beware.
All right, so that's going to do it for episode 120. That was Eurotrip. Julio, we got 121 coming up next. What's on deck?
121 is a movie that neither of us has seen. Our friend Patrick, I don't remember if I said this a couple episodes ago, but basically he messaged me, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, and he suggested the movie Greener Grass, which is fresh, and it's on Hulu. So I was like, all right, well, we'll put in the rotation, and we'll see when it comes up. And given that our bonus episodes are about to be taken over by our patrons, I was like, all right, well, it has to be now or never. It's November or nothing. Now, last time we took a friend's recommendation was the infamous Duplex episode. So hopefully this goes a little better.
Woof. Yeah.
It's fresh. I mean, Duplex was rotten, so there's that. I didn't get enough from Patrick to even tell if he liked it. I think he said it was a weird movie, which might have been how Duplex was sold to you, Alex. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Sounds like a plan. But that is going to do it for this episode. Moving along into plugs for our Patreon listeners this week. I will be discussing with Julio the Jake Gyllenhaal film Nightcrawler, which recently came across my radar. Julio, you got anything that's going to be discussed today?
I have quite a few things, but first I'm going to start with a little shout out. I was on our friend Billy's podcast. Remember Billy and Topher from the Street Fighter episode? Well, Topher just had a baby, so he's on paternity leave from the podcast. So Billy has been inviting people to fill in and do movies with him. So he invited me over to do Little Children, that movie with our new patron saint of the podcast, apparently, Patrick Wilson, and my number one crush in Hollywood, Kate Winslet. And also it's a movie that brought back Jackie Earle Haley. That's a movie that he got a supporting...
He was nominated for an Oscar, right?
Yeah. So I've been meaning to watch it since forever. I've owned the movie since forever. So this was just a good opportunity to take care of that blind side. So the episode is out. If you want to hear Billy and I talk about it, go to We Watch a Thing. Just look them up on their podcatchers, and I will be also telling you a little bit about it, Alex, on our patron segment, along with a couple other cool things that I watch. I watched the new Aaron Sorkin movie on Netflix, The Trial of the Chicago 7. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and also this sort of weird comedy variety special. It's called Sarah Cooper, Everything is Fine. You might have seen it pop up on your Netflix. It's weird, and I want to tell you about it. So all you patron listeners, which, by the way, since our last episode, we got new patrons. So welcome Ben and Paul from Filmbusters, the aforementioned Billy from We Watch a Thing, and our friend, longtime listener, Jamie Russell. Welcome, along with, of course, Dan and Katie and Oti. By the way, Dan loves that movie, Nightcrawler, so he'll get a kick of whatever you have to say, unless you don't like it, in which case he might stop being a patron. I don't know.
And for those interested in our Patreon, Julio, how can they go about doing signing up for that?
Patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. And of course, the link will also be on the show notes. You can go there. You'll find stuff that I got cut out of the episode, along with extended plugs and notes from notes that Alex and I took before recording the episode. A lot of stuff in those notes reveals how we feel. I don't know if you typed yours this time, Alex, but the contrast between your notes and my notes for the Rocker episode was just staggering. It made me self-conscious.
When I type them, it's usually just bullet points. When I actually write them down, I write out full thoughts. I typed them again, but I'll move back to writing them out because it gives a much better insight to my psyche that way.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the contrast was really funny. That was really the appropriate word. But either way, lots of goodies. Patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. Join if you want more from us.
Moving into our perennial plugs, as always, the Festive Years, who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand, Take Us Home with Summer of 99. Head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rotgieser. He's the man in charge of our logo, not just our regular podcasting logo, but also all the stuff on our Patreon, and also designing some stuff from our upcoming merch. Really busy Hans. Like I said, he's a podcaster. He's an artist. He does comics. He's also a writer. He has novels. He's also an economist. So 2 of his podcasts are about economy, Marginal and Contante y Sonante. They're in Spanish. Also in Spanish, he has a podcast of Peruvian current affairs, which, Alex, I wouldn't blame you for not knowing this because, here in the States we have our own shit going on. But Peru just basically went through 3 presidents in the span of maybe 2 weeks. So,
My God.
I know. So Hans and his show, they deal with that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you want to reach Hans on Twitter, he's at Mildemonios, Mildemonios. If you want to check his website where all his work is listed, mildemonios.pe. If you want to email him, mildemonios@hotmail.com.
All right, and lastly, thank you to Zoe Perez for all the work she does with our social media accounts, specifically our Instagram account. Churches everything up, makes it look real good, fun and interactive. Zoe, we appreciate all you do for us. All right, so that is going to do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.